Welcome back, everyone. In this section of the course, we're focusing on how to leverage Bard to actually generate code and perform coding tasks. Let's begin by just showing you how you can ask Bard for code and best practices there. Okay, here I am inside of Bard. Now, the key thing to keep in mind when you're using Bard to generate code is to be as specific as possible. You definitely want to give information to Bard that will help it answer your particular prompt or query. For example, if I'm dealing with a SQL database to read in some information, I don't just want to use natural language to say something like, help me connect with a SQL database and grab the sum of the, let's say, customer column. That's really not enough information. So why is this not enough information? Well, I haven't actually told it what language I want to work with. And you can see that Bard of Gemini is going to try its best that if it doesn't know enough, it's going to keep asking questions. For example, it wants to know, am I working with a particular SQL database and what programming language am I working with? In fact, these are two things you're going to want to constantly be asking yourself. Am I working with a particular flavor or syntax of a programming language or data set? And then what actual language do I want to work with? So do I want to just get the SQL data, or do I want to get a Python configuration for this? And then the connection details. Also, when it comes to data sets, give it as much information as possible about the data set. Things like table names, column names, etc., and then additional requirements. So you can see here, it asked me a bunch of follow-up questions. You're not going to get that every single time. It may just actually spit out some code that could or could not work. Instead, you want to always try to be as detailed as possible. So let's actually keep the conversation going. Let's say I have a Postgres SQL database, and I am connecting to it via Python, and it has two columns, customer and let's say spend. Okay, and what you can do is if you don't want to keep getting questions, you can say any other information, feel free to have a placeholder to fill in later. So I clarified some things for the stuff that maybe I didn't know. I went ahead and told Bard, feel free to have a placeholder there. And you'll notice that when you're working with Bard, especially with code, it tends to break up the steps into multiple parts. So for example, say install this library, do this imports, create a cursor, etc. This is sometimes a little bit annoying because you can't just copy all the code and paste it in. So what you can always do is either edit your original prompt to say, just give me the code with no commentary, or you can give a response to say, can you give me all those code blocks in a single block of code so I can easily just copy, paste everything. So adding to your prompt direction to just have everything together with no further commentary is really helpful. And the one thing to keep in mind as well when you're working with Bard to generate code is that it will usually give you some extra prompts, but it's a lot easier just to copy the code because each code block, as long as it's recognized as code, comes with its own separate copy code. So I can copy the code here. If for some reason I want to copy everything, I can hit these three dots and then copy everything. But that's going to include this markdown text as commentary. Typically, you just want to copy the code itself. Okay, so that's the basics. It's pretty self-explanatory, especially with Bard asking you more questions. But again, just be as detailed as possible. Don't forget to include things like information about the task what you're trying to do, specific libraries or packages you want it to use, as well as your programming language. So that's generating new code with Bard. Let's move on to the next section where we're going to work with existing code, basically give Bard some code and see what it can do with it. Let's head over to the next lecture.